Move on to another strange case, a court hearing for the U.S. Marine jailed in Mexico. Sergeant Andrew Morrissey firing his attorney right before the hearing started yesterday. Mexican police arresting him almost 2 months ago after, as he says, he accidentally crossed into the country with 3 registered weapons. One of his friends says he's being treated like a prisoner of war. The Marine spoke exclusively to our very own Greta Van Susteren. Take a listen.
He just he got on the walkie-talkie and was communicating what was going on. I think what he said was, "Hey, we got a guy down here with 3 guns," and then in came the military officer, marching and like he was a man on a mission to get the job done, and then he just took control from there, the military officer, and he didn't seem to care at all about anything of what I had to say or my story at all. It was like a math equation in his head: 3 guns, man equals prison.
More of that interview tonight, 7 p.m. with Greta. Now, for more on this, former prosecutor Dan Schorr is with us and trial attorney Heather Hansen. That all might be the case, but we've done enough of these stories, Dan, where we see an American go into another country, and your citizenship only gets you so far. So the issue right now is apparently the Marine says that his lawyer was telling him to lie about whether or not he's been to Tijuana before. He has been, apparently, but his attorney said, don't tell them that, and that's where the beef was. So now he has to start over. What do you think about that issue and how it's relevant to this case?
Well, the issue is he's saying that he never intended to go into Mexico. So according to this Marine, his lawyer was saying, just tell the court that you've never been to Mexico, and that's part of the reason you were confused. And he wanted to say, no, I have been to Tijuana before, but I was confused this time. I didn't intend to go to Mexico, but I need to be fully honest, because if you're caught in any lie, it's going to undermine your whole credibility for the case.
So did he do the right thing, the Marine here?
This is what happened. He absolutely did the right thing, because you don't want to lie to the court. You're in Mexico. If you get caught in any kind of lie, like having gone to Tijuana, they could use that against you and undermine all of your credibility for saying, I never intended to cross the border here. That's his case, that it was an accident.
That leads to the question, though, even though it was a mistake, Heather, then he went into another country with weapons. And we could all relate to making a wrong turn.
Right.
An honest mistake, but
mistake is not necessarily a defense. In Mexico, you're guilty until proven innocent. And the case is not put forth the way that our cases are put forth, with testimony and trial a certain number of days. It's put forth in bits and pieces. And part of that is his statement that he had never been to Tijuana before. So these things adding up put him in a really difficult legal position, which is why the political part of this becomes so important, because legally he's in a bad space.
And you say politically this is how this should be solved rather than in court?
I think that if it's solved in court, he's in a very difficult position. He's getting a new attorney, and hopefully that will help him out some. But having already lied to authorities, mistake is not necessarily a defense. What's he really going to say?
Well, I disagree with that. I don't know if we know for sure that he's lied to authorities. He's saying that at the border, he said, I don't want to cross the border. He apparently called 911 and said, I'm at the Mexican border. I don't want to cross. It was a mistake. I need assistance. So if that's all true, then he should not have been arrested. He should not be detained. And there's reports that he's being beaten and chained to a bed.
Well, let's get to that as well.
It's a horrible situation if that's true.
A fellow Marine, one of his friends, has been in contact with Andrew and has a description about the way that he's being treated. Let's go ahead and take a listen to that.
Everyone knows the international I surrender symbol is when you put your hands behind your head and say I surrender. Well, that doesn't allow officials to go ahead and take you down to the ground and beat you with a bat and dislocate your jaw and strip you naked and chain you to a bed for 24 hours. This is from his mouth. What I'm telling you right now is what he endured as a American citizen and a U.S. Marine, was that he was chained to his bed for so long that when they finally released him at the end of that 4 weeks, that he couldn't even walk. He was crippled from such bad muscle dystrophy and joint pain and not able to fire the muscles in his body.
I mean, if that's true, and we have no reason to doubt it, I mean, what what do we make of that, Heather?
Well, and it's a difficult situation because bail there is different, getting him out is going to be different, and that's why I go back to the issue that there's got to be political means to get him out, because the legal means, you can stay in jail there for a much longer period of time than you can
But
here.
does that mean politically that the government has to get involved in when everyone makes a wrong turn into Mexico and has an issue like this? Is it setting a bad precedent?
Well, this is a really important case because, first of all, it's a U.S. Marine, and it appears that he did not intend to go to Mexico. There's all the reason in the world to believe that. So you're saying intent is the center part of this case? Absolutely. Even if it's a crime that you could be arrested for just crossing the border, even if you didn't intend, you still, any prosecutor looks at the totality of the facts and has discretion to say, well, this person didn't intend to go across the border. He's a U.S. Marine. He quickly said he wanted to return to the U.S., and they still imprisoned him, and he's being beaten. This should not be the case. This is terrible if it's true, and it seems like it is.
I disagree just in the fact of the intent. I think the important thing here is that we have a Marine who is one of our own, who's being held and apparently abused. And so for those reasons, I think politically it makes sense to get involved. I think the intent thing comes to play in the legal system, and again, the legal system there is not as helpful to defendants as it is here in the United States.
Well, it raises the question, too, what happens if the opposite happened? A Mexican drive into the United States, had weapons, was pulled over. How would that person be treated in our prison?
Yeah. Another important point is there's rampant corruption in the Mexican legal system. So this isn't like the United States system where you could say, well, there's going to be due process, let it play its course. We can't have that confidence here that he's going to get due process.
And the problem is we honor their systems, just as we expect them to honor ours. So it is a difficult situation for him and his family, and the legal process is not going to help him as much as the political.
Well, we'll be interested to hear more from him tonight. Heather, Dan, I know you're going to be back with us. Thank you very much. More on this case as we get it. 7 p.m. Eastern Time. You don't want to miss this. Greta has the full interview with the jailed Marine for you tonight. That is at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, and we'll hear from him, John, about what actually is happening behind closed doors.
That is quite a story, and hats off to that Marine for enduring. A sensational murder trial is getting underway in New Hampshire and attracting all kinds of attention. It is drawing comparisons to the Amanda Knox case in Italy. The victim is a 19-year-old girl. Lizzie Marriott was her name. She was a student at the University of New Hampshire. Police say Marriott went to Seth Mazzaglia's apartment for a sexual rendezvous that included Seth as well as his girlfriend. But this afternoon of rough sex turned deadly. They say Mazzaglia admitted dumping Lizzie's body into a river. Her body has never been found. In the meantime, his girlfriend cut a deal to testify against him, but nothing in this case is necessarily a slam dunk. He is going on trial for murder. Would he be convicted? Our legal panel is here to talk about it. Dan Schorr is a former prosecutor. Heather Hansen is a trial attorney. So let's talk about what she testified to that got her this plea deal. She said that he wanted to have sex with Lizzie. She rebuffed him. He said, okay, then I'll have sex with my girlfriend and you watch. She didn't like that either. So while she's watching television, according to the girlfriend, he snuck up behind her, put a rope around her neck, strangled her, then had sex with her, apparently before she died, then dumps her body in the river. I have that right?
That's what they're saying, yeah.
What a case. So you think, Heather, that there might be problems proving this to a jury?
Well, the problems are multifold. There's no body, so we don't have any of the DNA and physical evidence that could put this case way over the edge. The other issue is the girlfriend's deal, John. She's getting 1.5 to 3 years. That's a really light sentence for someone, even at the least. If she helped him dump the body, I think that the fact that she has this deal is going to really hurt her on cross-examination, and the defense has already opened and said they're going to focus on her as being the primary person who was responsible for this death.
Yeah, it was a pretty lenient sentence for the girlfriend, Catherine McDonough.
Very much so, 1.5 to 3. At a minimum, she helped dispose of the body and helped to cover up evidence of the crime. We don't have a body here, which is usually an obstacle in a homicide case, but we know that the defendant dumped the body in a river with his girlfriend. So there's an explanation that's bad for the defense for why there's no body. So the prosecution won't be hurt by that. Of course, the girlfriend's going to be severely questioned on cross-examination about, aren't you testifying just to get this lenient plea deal? The question will be whether her testimony is in line with other evidence in the case. The defendant supposedly also made a statement saying that he took part in this killing and killed the
But
girl.
his defense is that, or his defense lawyer says, oh, it was all her.
Right.
She was jealous. She did it. He only panicked and helped get rid of the body.
And try to protect her, which I think is how they're going to explain away. As Dan said, there's a statement that he says that he did it. There's also a letter that he wrote and then ripped up that says that they were trying to create alibis. So he's going to have to say, I was just trying to protect my girlfriend after she did this. There's also, in the openings, the defense said that the girlfriend said, as they pushed the body into the ocean, welcome to Davy Jones's locker. Those types of things are inciting. And you've got to remember, again, you just need one person on the jury who has a reasonable doubt as to who did this to get a defense verdict.
You know, as Heather said before we sat down, this is all taking place in New Hampshire. I mean, this is not the kind of case involving bondage and, you know, all kinds of things that you normally don't get. How much is the turnoff factor here potentially going to affect this jury?
They might look at the defendant in an even worse way because he's part of this so-called sex game. They may look at the victim in a different way, but I think they're going to focus on the defendant and say, look, he lured the victim over to his apartment. He admitted, at least in one statement, to killing her. We know he helped dispose of the body. We know he wrote a note to his girlfriend later to try to cover it up and make up an alibi and frame other people. That's pretty powerful evidence here.
I think the issues, though, do make it difficult for the prosecution because you have all of these people involved in what many consider a seedy situation. I think also if there's a lot of women on the jury, we've talked about this before, and I think women tend to be harder on women. And so if you're trying to judge as between the defendant here and the girlfriend, there may be some issues there for the prosecution.
Yeah, well, it is quite a story, quite a case. It's going to get a lot of attention, and we will continue to follow it here on Happening Now. Heather Hansen and Dan Schorr. Wow, what a story. Thank you.
Thank you, John.